Good evening. Want to thank John for the slides. I also want to thank Eric back there for his good work, and he is extremely good with this, and we all appreciate it. I wanted to have a really cool laser pointer like Todd had, but I was afraid I'd put somebody's eye out, so I decided I'd forego that. Tonight, we're going to talk about the third chapter of Nehemiah. And I have to say, I found myself much more excited about the third chapter after I'd read it about the third time, because there were all kinds of interesting things that come to mind as you read it and you study it. And I want to encourage you to make comments as we go along, because there's all kinds of points we can make. The first, by way of review, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about Nehemiah. Based on chapters 1 and 2, what do we know about Nehemiah? He was a cupbearer to the king. And a friend. Mm-hmm. I think that's obvious from the way the king treated him. What else do we know? He was a man of God. In fact, we also know even more specific, he was a man of prayer as well. I note that in the first chapter of Nehemiah, it talks about the fact that he mourned and prayed and wept because of the state that the Israelites had fallen into for days. And obviously, God was with him, because we're going to read about some things he did that are just astounding when you really think about it. And it's a lesson to all of us, because with God's help, we can do anything. I read one study guide that basically felt like the overriding theme of this chapter to Christians was to make yourself available to God and to the work. Obviously, this whole chapter talks about the building of the wall and the work that the Israelites put in. Let's turn to Nehemiah. And we'll read the first 3 verses. And I have to confess, there are lots and lots of names I'm not going to be able to pronounce, so you'll just have to bear with me on that. Then Elizabeth, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and hung its doors. They built as far as the Tower of the 100 and consecrated it, then as far as the Tower of Hananel. Next to Elizabeth, the men of Jericho built, and to them Zachor, the sons of Imri, built. And also the sons of Hasaniah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and its bars. And next to them Memeroth, the son of Uriah, the son of Koz, made repairs. Next to them Methuselah, the son of Barak, the son of Methesabel, made repairs. Next to them Zadok, the son of Bana, made repairs. Next to them the Telechites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. Okay, very first part of chapter 3, in verse 1, it mentions the high priest. Do any of you find it unusual that the high priest himself would be doing physical labor, building a wall?
That shows the leadership, doesn't it?
it shows some leadership. In fact, it's a great example for us because not only did the high priest agree that it ought to be built, not only did he direct that it be built, but he himself participated in the building of the wall along with the priests. And when we talk about the wall, the first thing I did in preparation for tonight was to pull up the internet and look up the dimensions of the wall of Jerusalem that Nehemiah built. And come to find out, it's a pretty impressive structure. And once again, this came from the internet, so I'm not sure you can believe everything that's on the internet, but secular people have put together some numbers that I found interesting. I don't know if they're completely accurate, but here's what they are. The length of the wall was 4,018 meters, which is 2.4966 miles. The average height is 12 meters, which is 39.31 feet high. The average thickness is 2.5 meters, or 8.2 feet thick. That's a fairly formidable structure, is it not? And what was the purpose of the wall? Why did Nehemiah want to build it? So I guess it really wouldn't make much sense to build a picket fence, would it? They had to build a wall sufficient to keep intruders out. So this was a monumental task. In fact, according to the Burton Kaufman commentary that I read, Nehemiah was directing up to 30,000 people to build this wall. And when you get down to looking at the dimensions and the time frame in which he did it, it would have had to have been an enormous group of people. Just right off the bat, what comes to mind when we've talked about Nehemiah? He was a cupbearer to the king. He was a righteous man. Was he an architect? We don't really know. It doesn't say he was. Was he an engineer? I couldn't find anywhere that said he was used to commanding massive amounts of people. How do you think a man who's not a builder, who's not a carpenter, or at least we don't know if he was, who is not experienced in directing work like this, could build a structure as formidable as the wall of Jerusalem? He had God behind him. And he was because of that, he was able to do incredible things that an average person couldn't even contemplate doing. And that's a lesson that we're going to talk about throughout tonight.
This wasn't a slipshod type of job. I've read that there are some of those blocks that are still there and walls through that you can't get a credit card in. They fit so close together.
Well, I also read on the internet that some of those blocks weigh 50 tons. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we do know that at least parts of that wall exist today. So they obviously did it right, which to me is just astounding. Any other comments before we move on?
What do you think about the wall as being wider, deeper than it was? The doors that were built had to be just strong kind of deep because they had to be well built. I'm not describing the wall, the doors itself.
We're going to... We're going to read a lot about bars and gates being built and bars being hung, and it doesn't really describe the dimensions of that. But since you brought it up, which is a very good observation, we know that Nehemiah secured a letter from the king that allowed him to get timber from the king's forest, which some commentators believe was the forest of Lebanon. By the way, this is an aside, but I was shopping for trees one day out at Keithley's, and they had a cedar of Lebanon for sale. So if you come out to the farm on the 30th, you can drive by that cedar of Lebanon, which is planted beside the road. I'm going to have my own forest of Lebanon someday in miniature. Anyway, okay, moving on, we're going to read. And one last thing I want to bring out. At the end of that passage, it talks about all the priests and some other different people that were participating in building the wall. Does it say anybody didn't participate? The nobles, and I'll probably mispronounce that, but the Tekoites, nobles, refused to put their neck to the work. Now, I looked at that a little bit, and there were several reasons the commentary brought up as to why they might have done that. One, they may have been sympathetic to Sanballat or flat out afraid of him. But whatever reason, they are forever vilified as the only group mentioned in all of chapter 3 that did not pitch in and work. And I also find it very interesting that later in the chapter, the people of the Tekoites kicked in and helped out on another section of the wall. I kind of wondered in my preparation if they did that because they were embarrassed because their leaders wouldn't help out. I don't know that. Okay, let's look at verse 6. We're going to read verse 6 through 12. Moreover, Jehoiada, the son of Pasha, and Melusium, son of Besoadai, repaired the old gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. Next to them, Meliath the Gibeonite, Jadon the Beronothite, the men of Gibeon and Mizpah, repaired the residence of the governor of the region beyond the river. Next to him, Uzzel, the son of Hera, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs. Also next to him, Hanai, one of the perfumers, made repairs, and they fortified Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. And next to them, Repiah, son of Hur, leader of half the district of Jerusalem, made repairs. Next to them, Jedediah, the son of Harumph, made repairs in front of his house. And next to him, Hattush, the son of Habanosh, made repairs. Malajah, the son of Haram, and Hashub, the son of Path-Moab, repaired another section, as well as the Tower of the Ovens. And next to him was Shallum, the son of Haloahesh, leader of half the district of Jerusalem. He and his daughters made repairs. Well, there we go. I'm working on it. There are several very interesting things I want to bring up in this section of the chapter. You'll note on the screen the different gates and the different people that worked on or directed the work on the section of the gates or of the wall. And they went counterclockwise, by the way. They started with the sheep gate and went counterclockwise all the way around the wall and ended up back at the sheep gate. And it might be a total surprise to all of you, but the sheep gate was where they brought the sheep in. So there's something very striking to me in this section. everyone is engaged in the building of the wall. Can you really picture perfumers building a wall? I don't really know. I don't really have a concept in my own mind as to what a perfumer would look like, but I don't really picture them being the rugged type that'd be out there with doing hands-on work, but they were. In that passage so far we've had priests, goldsmiths, perfumers, city rulers, merchants, and also one family had their women out working in the wall. What does that tell you? What can you glean from that? Everyone worked.
Unity.
And why did everyone work? They were inspired. They were doing God's work and they all wanted it done, didn't they? And Jerry?
Well, I was thinking when you said that the priest started, or actually the sheep's gate, and when they did that, it made a, well, we can do this. The priest was doing it, and it kept going, made it be, just all started at once, it might have been not as motivating to see something completed before you did the next section.
Oh, I think it was very inspirational to watch the high priest himself get out there and work on that wall along with the other priests. And obviously, the people as a whole, a massive number of them, all pitched in and worked. And I think if there had been a group that hadn't, they would have been mentioned along with these Techite nobles that didn't. And thousands of years later, we'd be reading about them. Yes, ma'am.
I always have liked this story because there were two little girls in our family. And I just loved it that this man brought his daughters. And then later on, when they were dividing things up, people tried to leave them out. And they said, oh no, because they worked right alongside everybody else. And it always made me think that, it wasn't a disappointment to have daughters because God valued them.
Well, sure. That's exactly right. And it took everybody. The Lord's work takes everybody. And once again, when I read that, once again we had priests, goldsmiths, perfumers, city rulers, merchants, and one family's daughters. I don't see anything about engineers, architects, stonemasons. These were everyday people in all different walks of life that basically were given their all to do the Lord's work. That's really inspirational to me because how many times, I'm thinking to myself here, have I said, well, that's out of my comfort zone, I don't want to do that. I'm going to take the fifth on that because it's unfortunately not very pretty. But you read something like this and you get the sense that these people knew they were doing God's work. They all came together as a body and were much, much stronger for it and were able to accomplish things that I'm sure nobody thought they could. I don't want to steal any of Todd's thunder for next week, but there were certain nearby rulers that were making fun of him the whole time and actively going about trying to stop him. But they came together and as a body accomplished an amazing, amazing thing. Any other comments before we move on?
Did they, as Paul did this in unison, all the different groups, and go in the wall, or I thought about it before we go, and I said, well, they finished one section, and the next thing we did, or the next group did, but I guess maybe they just did it all at one time.
My impression is they did it all at one time. The priest started, though. Do you have a comment, John?
They built it to have a site for 52 days. You can't do that on and on.
That's exactly right. They rebuilt this wall in 52 days, so they would have all had to have been working all at once. As I read this, I thought, we live in the mightiest nation on earth. And I don't know if we could, as a whole, agree on what day it is. Think of what we could accomplish if we all did, if we could work as one person. And then I thought, the Israelites were outnumbered, they were beaten, they'd been destroyed, had no home. But they understood that with the Lord's help they could do anything, and that really bolstered my confidence in what we can do if we all decide to do it. Jerry?
The 50 days that John mentioned made me think of the 100 ships that are outside of Los Angeles. They're sitting there, they can't get the containers on fast enough. They can't get out there in the dock. So if we need to go out there and let them read Nehemiah.
I was almost afraid to bring up that comment about the country couldn't agree to anything because I didn't want to open that Pandora's box, that can of worms, because we could be here till the sun comes up and not cover half of everything we have struggles with. But I think everybody can understand the reason why they were able to do that. Any comments before we move on to verse 13?
It would seem to me that commerce, what little they would have had, came to pretty much a stop. Or at least these 60 days ago, to get that wall up 19 feet. So they had to have a will to work, they had to latch on to the vision, they had to have a degree of organization, and all the things that we talked about. It's just kind of amazing that they did it. Not in a year, not 6 months. We got it 19 feet tall in 52 days. You ever lift a really heavy stone? How do they do it? They had to come up with ways to do it.
Once again, there were up to, at least the commentary said there were 25 to 30,000 people engaged in this effort. If you just said, ready, set, go build the wall, can you imagine the pandemonium? They'd been tripping over themselves and fighting over who got to lift this or who had to lift that. It would have required incredible organization and incredible obedience by the people doing it. You had to have done what you were requested to. And I also think it was brilliant of Nehemiah to list certain people to do exactly certain things so they felt responsible for it. He'd say, all right, this group, do this section. And everybody knew who was responsible for which section. And as another indication of his brilliance, and we'll read further on, some of these groups, their homes were next to those sections of the wall. In fact, the priests, at least according to the secular things I read, the section they built was fairly close to the old temple. So there was significance in that. And we could talk about the significance of each gate, and we could really spend a great deal of time on each of those things. And they're all very interesting the more you look into them. But we'd miss the main theme of the chapter, at least in the time we have. Okay, builders near the valley gate. Let's look at Nehemiah chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. Hanun, the inhabitants of Zonah, repaired the valley gate. They built it, hung its doors with its bolts and bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the refuse gate. Malachi, the son of Rechab, leader of the district of Beth Harakim, repaired the refuse gate, and he built it and hung its doors with its bolts and its bars. Now, 1,000 cubits, according to the commentary, was 1,500 feet. So that's a pretty good section of wall when you're talking about how wide and how thick it was. So there were literally thousands and thousands of people working. Only the leaders of the different groups were mentioned, but they had to have been incredibly organized. Let's look at 15 through 27. Shallun, the son of Kolsheth, leader of the district of Mizpah, repaired the fountain gate. He built it, covered it, hung its doors with its bolts and bars, repaired the wall of the pool of Shechem by the king's garden, as far as the stairs that go down from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah, the son of Azbuk, leader of half the district of Beth Zur, made repairs as far as the place in front of the tombs of David, to the man-made pool, and as far as the house of the mighty. After him, the Levites under Rahum, the son of Bani, made repairs. Next to him, Hashish, leader of half the district of Keilah, made repairs of his district. After him, their brethren under Bavai, the son of Hindad, leader of the other half of the district, made repairs. And next to him, Ezer, the son of Jeshu, and the leader of Mizpah, repaired another section in front of the ascent to the armory and it's at the buttress. After him, Baruch, the son of Zabbai, carefully repaired the other section from the buttress to the door of the house, Elizabub, the high priest. And after him, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, son of Koz, repaired another section from the door of the house of Elishubab to the end of the house of Elishub. And after him, the priests, the men of the plains, made repairs. And after him, Benjamin and Hashubab made repairs opposite their house. After Isaiah, the son of Maaseiah, the son of Anaiah, made repairs by his house. After him, Benu, the son of Henadad, repaired another section from the house of Azariah to the buttress, even as far as the corner. Palal, the son of Uzziah, made repairs opposite the buttress. And on the tower which projects from the king's upper house, that was by the court of the prison, after him, Pedaiah, the son of Parosh, made repairs. That's a mouthful. Interesting side note, one of the secular references I read said that you can glean more of the placement of different things from Nehemiah Chapter 3 concerning Old Jerusalem than you can anywhere else, because it really goes into great detail as to where this was in relationship to this wall or this gate. And it's extremely detailed. Once again, Nehemiah felt it important to name exactly who was doing what. And I think it was important for each person that was told to do that, they felt responsibility. He delegated the responsibility of that section to these different people. Yes, ma'am.
Don't you think, though, it is fun and it is uplifting to be a part of something great? And Nehemiah helped them see that. And how downtrodden were these people when their city wall, their protection was just crumbling, and somebody comes in and says, "Hey guys, we got to get this back." Who drove
don't you find it fascinating that we don't have record of somebody saying, well, you're crazy. This is a massive wall. There is no way we can redo this before Sanballat and some other people come and tear it down again. Once again, I think about our country. Anytime a positive suggestion is made, there's just people lining up to tear it down. And I worry sometimes that we may sometimes be like that ourselves in the church because we don't realize what we can do together. How do we overcome that? How do we convince ourselves that we can be like Nehemiah and these people and accomplish incredible things? That's exactly true. And when I think about that, I think about myself. And unfortunately, I tend to think, I can't do that. That's too big. That's too hard. There's too much. I'm only one person. And really, it tends to be an excuse not to try. But when we think about the fact that we're all members of the Lord's church, and none of us are alone, none of us, that really bolsters my thinking. And I really enjoyed this chapter. When I first read it, I thought, wow, it's just so-and-so built this and so-and-so built that. But the more I read it and the more I studied it, I came to realize that this was Nehemiah, through God, accomplishing an unimaginable feat in 52 days. And it's why we study the Old Testament, so we can learn. John?
I remember when we had a campaign many years ago, the folks came in to give us an assignment. The assignment was, here are 30 areas of work that need to be done before this thing will work right. And so, of course, we had a lot more people then, and people kind of lined up and found out where their skills were. They found their area of work. They had a mind to work together. And when it finally happened, it was a great success because everybody did their part. I think it's the secret here. You might think that you don't have a partner, but you really do. All you have to do is find that place where you can plug your skills in. They probably had little kids running around with water. They had people making iron in bars and things. People found the skills that they had. If you didn't have a skill, then you were pulling brick out of the rubble. You found something to do.
What they had was effort. They all had effort, whether they had the skill or not. And God had to be with them because they accomplished so much, apparently without trained people, or at least we don't have any mention of the engineers. And it goes into great detail to list the people that do. I think if there had been a group of engineers there, I think it would have been listed, or architects or whatever.
But you know, these people were not just soft people sitting around doing nothing. I mean, these people had to take care of their own families. They had to have a crop, or they had to have a job where they could afford to buy things to feed their family. I mean, you know, they weren't just resting there. They had work to do, and they did that. So they had skills of some sort because they had to.
Do you think it's fair to also say that they recognize their need? This passage talks about these people were building sections of the wall near their house. The perfumers, the goldsmiths, they were in Jerusalem. And as you said, they were living there without any defense and making a living and trying to take care of their families. And when Nehemiah came and gave them purpose, they were able to unite. Let's quickly finish off the rest of the chapter, starting with verse 26. Moreover, the Nethan who dwelt in Opal made repairs as far as the place in front of the Watergate Tower toward the east. And on the projecting tower, after them the Tekelites, there they are again, repaired another section next to the great projecting tower as far as the wall of Opal. Beyond the horse gate, the priest made repairs, each in front of his own house. After them, Zadok, the son of Imner, made repairs in front of his own house. After him, Sheremiah, the son of Shekiah, the keeper of the east gate, made repairs. After him, Hananiah, the son of Shemlachi, and Hanan, the sixth son of Zalpath, repaired another section. After him, the son of Beradoth made repairs in front of his own dwelling. After him, Malagi, one of the goldsmiths, made repair as far as the house of Nethium and of the merchants in front of the Mikpoth gate, and as far as the upper room of the corner. And between the upper room and the corner, as far as the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and the merchants made repairs. So they've come full circle. As we talked about, they did this in 52 days. And I want to comment again, I really like that the Tekites repaired another section of the wall without their leadership. Those folks were dedicated, and I guess they finished their part and realized they could help out somewhere else, and it made no difference to them if their leaders weren't with them or not. Any comments?
Do you have any idea where they even got the rock?
My understanding was most of the rubble was there, that walls were just knocked down. So I don't think they had to mine it or anything. I think they were able to salvage most of it from the rubble. At least that's my understanding, John.
Underneath the mountain are holes that are the ones quarries. Half of this thing was built out of rocks that were underneath it. And the areas around it were full of good quarries and stuff material. So the original walls were built and have been knocked down, which took a lot of effort for somebody to knock down. And they used a lot of that rubble plus probably other things they could fashion.
Well, I think that's probably why the walls weren't totally destroyed, because they knocked down enough sections to get their army through and ransack Jerusalem and then leave. So it wasn't the wall wasn't totally destroyed, just destroyed to the point where it wasn't defensible anymore. Well, I think my time is up. I would like to invite each and every one of you personally to come out on the 30th for a weenie roast out to the farm. We're going to be there from 4 to 6, and we're going to roast some hot dogs and some marshmallows, and we'll have a bonfire. I promised myself after my first bonfire, which was about 15 years ago, it was so hot that you couldn't get within 15 feet of it without singeing your eyebrows. I don't know if any of y'all remember that or not, but I've learned a little since then. Thank you very much.